This is the Crowd Crux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Briggman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project with your host, Sal Briggman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at fulfillrite.com. What up, crowdfunders? Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. And my name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you for joining me here today. On this show, I interview entrepreneurs, people who have successfully raised money on Kickstarter and Indiegogo and other crowdfunding websites. It's kind of difficult because I think crowdfunding, it's such a new subject that the actual principles that go behind a successful funding round, a successful fundraising campaign, they're always changing. There are things that are working, there are things that aren't working. And my goal with this show was to really hear it from the horse's mouth. You know, that expression, hearing it directly from someone who is right now raising money or has successfully raised money on Kickstarter, I think just improves your chances a heck of a lot when you're taking your own project there and you're trying to gather interest. You're trying to get people in the door. You're trying to get people to take action. I think it really says a lot that we're learning from people who are employing strategies and employing tactics that are working right now on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. It's kind of like a weird unearthing process. You know, I have to ask them questions. I have to really dig in, get to the nitty gritty of what they're actually doing behind the scenes, behind that. You know, it looks like a great campaign on the outset. The funding meter is going up, more and more people are joining, but a lot of the stuff happens behind the scenes. There are trials and tribulations and failures and things that happen that we just never see. So my job as an interviewer is to basically tap into that and to share that information with you, to unlock that information for you. And now, every once in a while, I'll get you talk with an expert who has already thought about this process a lot. You know, they've had multiple students go through their programs. They've had lots of people who have used their services, and basically as a result of that, of seeing these things, they've really been able to nail down an effective launch strategy that anyone can use to get funding, to get people interested in your project. And I'm able to talk with one of those experts here today. So this is Eli, the founder of Mad Hatter Studios. Mad Hatter is a crowdfunding consulting agency. I've known Eli for a while. I think we got into the industry around the same time. Basically, he's been helping people with their entire crowdfunding campaign. So he'll help you with marketing, he'll help you with getting attention, all of that kind of stuff, even the script for your video, etc. And he came on the show today because he wanted to share with you the nitty-gritty aspects of running one of these campaigns. Things like, okay, what are my percentage conversion rates that I should be aiming for? How many emails should I build up? All of those nitty-gritty questions he's going to answer for you today on the podcast episode. But we also have something special to offer you. So along with providing a ton of great info today, Eli is also willing to help you with your crowdfunding campaign. So for those of you who are interested in hiring him and bringing him on to run your actual campaign, you have the budget to be able to do that, we've set up a special link for you where when you go through and you apply, keep in mind, he doesn't accept a lot of the people who apply for his services just because there's a big influx and obviously not everyone is going to be a good fit for Mad Hatter. But if you go through, you apply and you're accepted into his program, and he decides to work with you and on your project, on the beginning of the second month, I will come in and I'll do a free coaching call with you. So we'll use that call to really make sure that you feel very certain about going into this campaign. We'll get any kind of questions that you have answered. We'll really set your project up for success and make sure there aren't any sort of red flags or glaring pieces that are missing to your strategy. So not only are you going to gain access to Eli with a special offer, but you're also going to gain access to me. me. So if you want to check that out, the link to check that out is crowdcrux.com/Mad Hatter. That is crowdcrux.com/Mad Hatter. You can just fill out the application form there, and Eli will get to you pretty soon after that. But regardless of whether or not you're interested in that, I think today's episode is killer. He really brought his A game. I was really blown away by the amount of information that he was willing to share with you. It's just a lot. It's really just golden nuggets if you're preparing for a project and you're kind of wondering, what should I actually be doing in order to raise funds? It's coming up right after this. Eli, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you on and talking about this new project that you've been working on, raised over 193,000 euros for the Digma campaign. And also, we had you on the podcast a few episodes back, episode number 150, the crowdfunding, my title, Crowdfunding Expert Reveals the Perfect Kickstarter Launch Strategy. We actually had a lot of good feedback from that episode. People said it was extremely helpful. So thank you for coming back on the show. I know you have a lot of stuff you want to get into with the strategy for this project. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sal. Always a pleasure.
Also, just for those of us who aren't familiar with you, they haven't had a chance to listen to your last episode. Can you just give us a bite-sized explanation of what it is you do, Mad Hatter Agency, how you help crowdfunders?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the founder and CEO of Mad Hatter Agency. We specialize in digital marketing and crowdfunding. So I help people who are looking to raise funds in the crowdfunding world through Facebook ads, PR, coaching, consulting, and then we also offer, full agency services. So if someone just wants to come to us with their idea and say, here you go, run with it, we can do that too.
I love the name of your company, by the way.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, we want to make it something fun and exciting. When I had started this, I was an international consultant before. And, I lived in a suit. And I said, the next thing I'm going to do, I literally went out and burned all my suits. And I said, I'm just going to live.
That is a bold move, dude. You're like burning money there.
No, literally. And I did it because I was afraid that if I didn't do it, it'd be too easy for me to come back to my former self.
Oh.
So I was like, well, at least this way there's a couple $1,000 buffer. Yeah, exactly.
You're just watching you from afar. Also, in the last few years, I got started in 2012. I got into the industry, and one of the things that I noticed when I got started was just the fact that you were also positioning yourself as an expert. You have courses out there on Udemy. You've put out YouTube videos. You've put out lots of education over the years. So I think there are a lot of agencies in this space, but one of the ways that I think that you've really distinguished yourself is also being an educator, also being someone who's willing to help people along the path, even just coming onto the show and sharing what's working for this one campaign. I think you've also distinguished yourself that way.
Yeah, for us, in our agency, we're an entrepreneur-focused agency, so we are a smaller boutique agency. We don't take every deal. We do a feasibility study before we take any deal, and it's really just to make sure that there's a good fit between us and the product. So a lot of times we'll do a feasibility study, and someone's looking to raise $200,000, and then for one reason or another, either they don't have the right assets. We don't have a historical, path to success. Something's there where there's just too much risk for us, and we're going to say, hey, we're going to back up. But for the companies that we do work with that are a good fit, we've been able to have some really, really cool success. And at the end of the day, what I always tell people is, I started this company with money borrowed from my son's piggy bank. I was going through a crazy divorce. My first client was actually Pandora. And they wrote me a check. I had to borrow money from my son's piggy bank to put in the bank account to actually open a bank account to cash a check. So,
yikes.
Yeah. It's all about, helping bootstrappers, and, not everyone's going to be able to afford to pay me, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, if we can help more people and build this industry together, it's going to work out for all of us.
Yeah, that's really in line with my values too. And towards the end of the interview, I want to get more into some of the things that you do offer, your services, who it is that's a good fit for you, what you can do for them, et cetera. But before we do, I really want to talk about this project, the Digma Raise, the world's most advanced gaming keyboard. Can you tell me a little bit about this, the success that you had there, and then we can get into some of those tips and advice that you have for other people?
Yeah, so this was a consulting client. So the difference is on a consulting client, we are basically going to be the outsourced campaign manager. So rather than having to try to learn all this stuff and do it yourself, These are people who say, hey, I can do some Facebook ads. I can do what needs to be done as long as you tell me exactly what needs to be done. And so in this case, this was a consulting client. We took them on. They're out of Spain. Their founder is a former esports coach. So he's like one of the guys wearing a little headset, coaching this esports team. And it just blew me away. I knew the industry was big. I didn't know as big as it was. I mean, how many multi-millions of dollars getting pumped into this thing, and these teams winning just huge prizes at these tournaments, right?
What is esports? What I totally missed that.
Yeah, so esports is basically like electronic sports. So they have like games like League of Legends and others of these action games where you basically play in teams against each other. But instead of like teams of playing basketball, you're gonna have teams playing video games in a tournament to win money and big money. Yeah.
Okay.
So what's crazy about this industry is you got these guys that are playing it and practicing for hours and hours on end, right? And after a while, your wrists start giving out. You start getting all kinds of problems like carpal tunnel and whatnot. And so they've designed this keyboard that actually splits in two, and then it's a more ergonomic way to play. You have faster reflexes, all that other good stuff, right? And it was designed by an esports coach.
Okay. So yeah, I'm taking a look
really,
at the.
Really cool to see that kind of come on.
I'm taking a look at the image here. So it's almost like the one keyboard is split in two and has these really cool like neon looking lights. I'm sure that they change colors. Gaming computers always are really sweet. So it has a really neat like keyboard that lights up, and making sure, I guess, so you don't have a claw hand after you've been playing and practicing for a really long time. Yeah,
exactly, 100%. And so it's got some extra buttons and stuff on it, like all within like a thumb's reach, and just really interesting specific things for the gaming community.
Cool. Awesome. So these guys came to you, you saw the product, you're like, wow, that's awesome. Also because the esports industry, I didn't even know about that, honestly, that there are like coaches and stuff that help that out, but it seems like you knew a little bit about that. So they came to you, and what were you doing for them? Like what were you helping with their project?
Yeah, so everything. So we did a full scale raise for them. So everything from lead development, messaging development, audience curation, email marketing, PR, designing of the page, scripting and shooting the video, all that good stuff. So rather than us and having my agency do all that, I work with them and then instructed their team on here's how it should look, here's how it should feel, here's what we should say for the story, here's how we should position this keyboard, here's how we should talk to the media, etc. So all the way through it, we basically just coach them on exactly what to do and how to do it. And the result is, I think it's like $237,000 US. I think that's the equivalent.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that though.
Yeah, it was 193,000 euros, so probably around that for US dollars. So you basically, we have a lot of listeners who are going through their project right now, like they're preparing for their Kickstarter campaign. You've made a business and a career out of launching and helping people launch these different projects. They obviously come up with the amazing idea, they put together the prototype, and then they come to you, and you're sort of helping them get that out there into the Kickstarter ecosystem. So what I want to hear from you, or what I want to ask you, is when you were launching those first few days, and I'm looking at your Kickstarter statistics, you were able to hit the funding goal within the first 4 days. How were you able to do that?
Yeah. So what I tell everyone when it comes to crowdfunding is you basically want to, sell this thing out during your pre-launch. And so this practice has been tried and proven for any type of fundraising, right? So whether that's going into a nonprofit and getting some high net worth individuals to be big donors and do what's called a match. So, hey, match us for every dollar we raise. And that way, if we raise 100 grand and we're trying to reach 200 grand, then boom, we hit it on the first day, right? So oil and gas industries use it a lot. So in crowdfunding, the same thing. So what you want to do is you want to basically create a community of people to come in, show them the product, tell them what it is you're doing, educate them on what you're doing, and then tell them that you're launching a Kickstarter campaign, and basically answer any questions before you go live. And then what you want to do is you want to tell them, hey, if you back on the first day, there's these early bird discounts, and we're going to give you these types of bonuses, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens then is the people who see this, they start being a part of the story. They start saying, wow, this could really help me. And they come in and they back day one. And then they tell their friends. And that kind of creates this big flurry of activity, and that sets the velocity for the campaign. The worst thing to do, the absolute, and you know this, I've seen, what I love about you, Sal, is I'm a crowdfunding expert, and I still get your crowdfunding emails, and I read those emails, right? I'm a student of the game, and I mean, you're talking to so many creators and entrepreneurs doing the same thing, so I learn a lot from you, and it's just a nice, cool circle. But
yeah, totally.
Where I was going with that is, what was I saying on the emails?
Oh, so the fact that when you launch, you want to make sure that you have this sort of pre-launch community, people that are exposed to you, your brand, what it is you're working on. That kind of, I guess, creates the velocity in the beginning of the project. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So that velocity then is what carries you through. And then the worst thing you can do is not have that velocity. So a lot of people will spend a ton of time on the product. And I'm not saying shortcut the product. I absolutely am not saying that. Okay. I mean, hammer that thing out, really get it crystal clear. But what I'm saying is you need to spend the time on the marketing side of things. Otherwise, you're going to have this really shiny, cool product and no one to buy it. And so if you just launch with a very small community or an unengaged community, this thing goes nowhere. So let me kind of give you an example. So the typical flow that we have is we build a landing page, and then we start taking out some Facebook ads, start doing some social media posts. And the whole idea is to get people to see the post or the ad, click it, and then go to the landing page where they see an image of the product, they see a description of the product, they see what problem the product solves, how it works, and then we ask them for an email address in exchange for reserving it at a quote-unquote special discounted price or 40% off, or whatever the founder has in mind. So people say, okay, cool. They give us their email address. And then what happens there is there's an email series that starts going out regularly on timed intervals that starts telling the story. A lot of people will make the mistake of just feature puking, right? Oh, here's this keyboard and here's everything it does and 100 bullet points. Wrong thing to do, right? And because if you think about it, humans are designed to filter out ads and just noise, right? We've seen too many of the stuff online already, and so we're just callous to it, right? But what we do have time for, and we do make time for, is stories. So when we see an interesting story start to unfold, we start to get involved. And so what I tell every creator is, hey, instead of just telling about your product, tell about your story. What gave you the idea? How bad was it, right? How bad did your wrist hurt? Were you losing tournaments because of this stuff, right? And then how did you decide to split the keyboard? And then why'd you add all these little extra buttons and da-da-da-da? So when you start telling that story, people really start getting involved in that story, and you start turning that community from a passive consumer, which is where 99% of retail is, right? Hey, here's this thing, buy this, into co-creators with you, right? People start identifying with you, and they start wanting to support you as the creator and the product that you're creating.
I love that. So the story is almost like a vehicle that people are using in order to discover what this product is about and also get warmed up to the person who's actually made it. It's kind of like a secret weapon, if you will, to get the word out there about your project. The story is what emotionally engages people, is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about this. People say, hey, why aren't you where you're at in life? I don't have the time. Cool. You watch any TV shows? Oh, yeah, I love Game of Thrones. They're probably that's 2 or 3, right? People are they make time for stories, right? So tell your product story in a way that is interesting and exciting, and people will pay attention.
There's so much truth to that. Even like trashy reality TV shows, we just watch them because we want to find out what people are doing, what they're up to, what are the reactions to people when events happen. Like, there's so much truth to that. Seeing a story unfold really captures our attention. I want to ask you here a little bit more of like a hard-hitting question. So when it comes to the actual pre-launch, I want to get into some numbers. So if someone is listening to this show and they're like, okay, so Eli knows what he's doing. He's going to get this crowd before the actual launch. But for me, how many emails should I have before I go into one of these raises? If I'm trying to raise 6 figures, like how many emails should I aim to gather? What's your answer to someone who asks that kind of question?
Yeah, I mean, what I always tell people is, get $1 million raise, you need at least 10,000 emails. And so you kind of work backwards from there. So on a $100,000 raise, bare ass minimum, you want 1,000. Ideally, I like them around 2,500. Mm-hmm. And then your leads, depending on how you acquire them. But if you're using Facebook ads, those leads are going to come in anywhere between $1 to $3, just depending on what industry you're going after and how many other people are advertising to the same group at the same time, because it's a bid type thing, right? Mm-hmm. So the more advertisers, the more expensive your leads. But if you can also, you'll find little pockets where no one's advertising to, and you'll have those leads come in. We've had leads come in at like 19 cents, but other ad sets are coming in at $2.
Yeah, the average. Yeah.
Yep.
So you do that, you build that email list, let's just say of 2,500 people. How many can you expect to actually end up becoming customers or end up actually opening and buying into the project that you've created?
Yeah, we always try to shoot for between 5 to 10% on the high end. 10%, the best that we've ever had, it was like a little less than that. It was like 9.8, something like that. But 5 to 10%. So with that, though, you have to think of this thing in a long term. Okay, so usually crowdfunding is step one for most people, right? So they're usually not just going to crowdfund something and then walk away from it, right? So you're usually going to have an e-commerce store, et cetera, right? So most people are impulse buyers, and I'm one of them, right? I don't buy anything unless I can get on Amazon. I can get it here in 2 days. Sorry, it's just how it is. Okay, so for most people, you got to remember this. They're going to come, they're going to sign up, they're going to see the whole story, they're going to be intrigued. They might not back the campaign, but they will buy it as soon as it's ready to ship. Okay, so that conversion rate goes up the longer you're in business. Okay?
Interesting.
Because we've been able to, once we start shipping, go back to that same list. Not back, and we've said, hey, we're finally ready to ship, and then all of a sudden, we're converting at 10 to 15%, as opposed to hoping for 10% on the Kickstarter raise.
That is so interesting, yeah, because you're taking more of like a long-term view here, and the fact also that when people see that you actually are delivering on your promises and that other people are interested, it's naturally going to improve those conversion rates.
Exactly. Well, and it's interesting you say that, Sal, too, because that's a huge point where you really got to hammer this home, which is the trust factor, right? So almost every Kickstarter campaign ships late. And it's just how it is, guys. I mean, there's always things in a startup that you don't expect. I've done over 300 of these, and there's still stuff that surprises me, right? You get blindsided by things here, and then you got to hustle, right? So what you want to do with the crowd is really build that trust, right? And that's why you want to really kind of focus on the story. You want to talk about the product. You want to talk about you personally, because at the end of the day, me as the backer, Sal, I'm trusting in you, Sal. I'm trusting that if I give you my money, you're going to take it and you're going to fulfill your promise to me in giving my product within this time frame.
It's all about promises, yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't, there's no recourse for the consumer. Maybe you can do like a class action, but that's a whole lot of work for $100, product or something, right? So it's really about selling yourself, being personable, making yourself approachable, answering questions, and really kind of building that trust.
Interesting. I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today. The other really quick question I had for you on the numbers front, for those of us that are looking to build up that crowd, what should we be shooting for you mentioned putting together this landing page. What should we be shooting for in the way of the percentage of people that actually will opt into the email list here? What should we be shooting for?
Great question. Okay. Because if you just have a landing page and you're getting emails, I tell people, hey, I'll have clients say, yep, we got a landing page. We're already starting to collect emails. And I say, is it working? Yeah. Okay. Well, how are you measuring success? Well, we're getting emails. Well, what percentage? Oh, I don't know. Right.
Yeah.
So we always shoot for a bare minimum of 20%.
Bare minimum. Okay.
Bare minimum 20. If it's not converting at 20%, 20%, we won't kill it, but we're going to create another variant or several variants, and then we're going to test them side by side to see which one's converting the best. And an easy software to do that, I mean, you can use like lead pages. We use Instapage because we have a little bit more control. There's a bunch of other stuff out there, but those are the two big ones. But at least 20%. And once you start getting your message down and really refining who you're targeting on your ads, you'll start to see those numbers increase, between 30 to 50%, which is really where we like to be. So on average, our pages that we make for clients are converting between 25 and 40%.
I think the reason why it's important to underscore is that if you have a page that doesn't convert as well, it's going to drive your cost per lead up. So it's going to be more expensive to actually get these people onto the email list.
Right. So perfect example, right? So if you're sitting there and you get your lead cost $3, guys, and you're on a limited budget, and you're like, okay, I got to get this lead cost down, rather than just taking out a bunch more ads, look and see if you can make some changes to your landing page. Okay. And then the other thing on the ad side of things is I'm going to look at the click-through rate. So if I'm getting a click-through rate of over 3% and I'm getting less than a 20% conversion on my landing page, that means I need to fix my landing page. Mm-hmm. If I'm getting a 0.5% click-through rate on my ad, then that typically means I need to change my ad.
Yeah, exactly. So there are a lot of variables here. There's the actual ad, there's the actual lead, the landing page, and then once you get them onto the email, then there's the variable of making sure you have a good sequence to actually warm people up to your story and use. There's a lot of stuff to manage here. And that's sort of what you offer with Mad Hatter is, taking that out of people's hands and doing all of that. I did want to ask you here too, there's some other tactical stuff I want to get to, but before we do, I want to ask you personally, from you having worked on, I think you said 300 projects over the last several years, what's been the aspect of that you've liked most? I mean, you mentioned wanting to burn your suits and wasting all that money when you quit your job. What is it that's been different for you with this type of work than what you were doing previously?
Yeah, I mean, I was in an airplane 3 out of 4 weeks. I was working with heads of state from countries mostly in Central and South America, and I was gone. I mean, so I had a new baby. I came home, and my house was cleaned out. With newborn was gone, the wife was gone, right? And I got served divorce papers the same day. So for me, it was all about, okay, I want to be, home. I don't want to be, living on a plane. And if I'm going to do this, I want to do what I want to do and work with who I want to work with. And I said, okay, who do I like working with? And at the time, I was working with some folks to create Denver's first startup week. Mm-hmm. So really liked working with entrepreneurs and whatnot. So I said, okay, I'm going to work with entrepreneurs. And then I said, okay, well, how do I do that? And then I met this guy, Scott Case, who was the CTO of Priceline. He introduced me to Slava Rubin, who at the time was the CEO of Indiegogo. And then so he started talking to me about crowdfunding and kind of showed me how it works. And then one of his guys over there, Adam Chapnick, kind of trained me on how to do this. And I was like, wow, this is super cool. And what's so fun about this is I literally feel like I'm playing Shark Tank all day, every day. I get to see sweet, cool new products. I get to see entrepreneurs who have odds stacked against them, but have a really cool product and a really cool story. And then we get to bring that to life. And then see somebody who just had this little bitty tiny idea, and next thing you know, they've got the money to take this thing to the next level. But we were at literally ground zero. So it's kind of like being like an A&R person for a record label. Yeah. You get to see people when they were just playing at coffee shops.
I think one of the things that I've also noticed in the industry, and you said this before the call, is that one of the ways that crowdfunding is changing is that it's not only now based in U.S.-based entrepreneurs. Like I think United States, I love our country. I think that we're great in the innovation aspect. But what we're noticing is that now that innovation quality, that dedication to hard work and coming up with really great products that solve solutions, that's actually being spread to other areas of the world. And other people out there, whether you're from Spain, whether you're from different countries in Europe, even in China, et cetera, like more of these countries are actually adopting crowdfunding, are getting into tap into these communities, entrepreneurs from many different backgrounds. Did you also notice that as you've been in this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've noticed, I mean, most of the leads that we get now are international. And it's been cool to see because I like just traveling anyway, and working with people in different cultures. And this is just I got people calling me from Indonesia and Bali and Germany and, everywhere else. And sometimes there's a little bit of a language barrier, but most of the time it works out, right? I mean, I think we're like one of the only countries that just speaks English. But thankfully everyone else in the world is tuned in. But it's just super cool because a lot of times what you'll see the kind of like the different variations of the same thing in the US. And the next thing you know, you talk to somebody in Australia who's doing it completely different, who's got a completely different take on it. And it's just kind of cool to see those different perspectives, across the world.
And we're also seeing lots of different backers from other countries. So whether that's from Japan or South Korea or Sweden, like we have not only entrepreneurs that are now launching projects from countries outside of the United States, which is amazing, from Spain, et cetera, France, but we're also having backers that are international and backing projects from all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing. I mean, because a lot of people say, well, crowdfunding is just so competitive now, and it's just so hard to get people's attention. And I mean, yes and no, right? It's because at the end of the day, I mean, every time that a new country comes on, starts crowdfunding, I mean, we're just massively expanding, our backer database, right? So the potential of backers. So now you got more people who know what Kickstarter is, you got more people who know what Indiegogo is in other countries. And so it just keeps getting bigger and bigger the more people you can sell to, right? Now, on the flip side of that, people say, oh, well, it's just really hard to get to them. Well, if you have a good product and you're telling a good story, it really isn't, because you're going to stick out more than most people. And I've got what is this thing? It's called Turbo Ad Finder. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not, no.
Okay, so it's a Google Chrome extension. It's called Turbo Ad Finder, and you can put it on your little Chrome browser. And then when you're on Facebook, you just hit this one button, and it'll turn your entire Facebook feed into all ads.
All ads?
Yeah, all ads. So all you'll see is ads. And so I just do that, at least 2 or 3 times a day just to kind of see what's out there as far as ads go. And I would say 70 to 80% are just junk, right? But the ones that really stick out, I click on, right? And I know what they're doing. I've got an ad agency, and I'm going to, I'm just like, wow, this is cool. And I just walk kind of through those flows. And as I'm kind of walking through these flows, I just start taking notes, what I liked about the landing page, what I liked about the story, what I liked about the headline. And I just have literally mountains of these files with these different, headline variations and landing page designs that we just use to inspire us. And you should too. I mean, for anyone that's running a crowdfunding campaign, do that simple exercise over 2 or 3 days, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
That's almost like a complete mindset shift, because when you said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds like my worst nightmare to have just all ads. But then it makes a lot of sense. Having that mindset shift from being a consumer to being an entrepreneur, you have to look at things a little bit differently.
Yeah, exactly. And if you really want to kind of tee that up for the consumer, I mean, think about your ideal avatar, right? So in your case, right? So who are your people that you go after? You go after entrepreneurs, you go after people that like Kickstarter, like Indiegogo, right?
Nerds, geeks.
Yeah. Nerds, geeks, absolutely. And what kind of websites do they do, and which pages do they like, et cetera, right? So just go and start liking all those pages, and then wait a couple days, and then use that ad finder, and you'll see your feed is directly related to those people, right? So the nerds and the geeks for the ads, and then you can kind of see what other people are doing to advertise that community, and that'll inspire you to do something more cool and better and innovative, and where you're not just another Me Too type ad.
That is really, really smart. I also want to say here, I think if you're listening to this show and you're in that international demographic, literally there is no better time to launch a crowdfunding campaign, because as we all know, we're limited by the marketplace that we live in. So if you're in a small town, you're in a small state, or you're in a small country, and just for whatever reason, the entrepreneurial base is not as strong, maybe the consumer base is not as strong, that does not limit you anymore. You can now go on a crowdfunding platform like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. You can launch an online store, and you can actually tap into the audience all over the world. And just like we said, there are more and more international entrepreneurs that are doing this, that are seeing success, and they're wanting to get a slice of the pie, and also many backers that are international. So I honestly think this is the best time to go into crowdfunding if you are outside of the United States and you're one of those international creators.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sally. I mean, I started a marketing agency in 2008, and that was a really, really rough time to start anything in the U.S. And what's interesting about it, what's cool about crowdfunding is you might have, like, the same thing. The U.S. could be going through a recession, right? No one's spending any money. And okay, cool. So we're just going to start advertising in Germany. We're going to start advertising in the UK. We're going to start advertising in Australia, Japan, et cetera. And you can do that all from your laptop these days. And you can do it very, very quickly.
That's pretty sweet. I'm speaking to the crowdfunders in the audience who have already launched a Kickstarter campaign, or have actually even successfully run a campaign. And the reason is, I think you will understand this pain point most. And that is, when you finally do raise money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, the hardest part is not collecting the cash. The hardest part is shipping out all of those perks and rewards to your backers. It is a nightmare, my friends. It's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of headache, and it's a lot of stress. That's why I recommend BackerKit. If you have not heard of BackerKit, they help you collect surveys, they help you collect data, and the entire fulfillment process is just so much easier and so many less spreadsheets when you use their software. You can check them out at backerkit.com and use CrowdCrux for a special discount. Well, we're going a little bit longer than some of my other shows, but actually I think we're having a really great convo here. And I wanted to ask you about your strategy on Twitter, because I know that was a big source of traffic and backers for your project. So would be great if you could bear with us for a few more questions here. I also think the audience will really appreciate it. Could you tell us a little bit about Twitter as a source of traffic and backers for the project?
Yeah, so I have traditionally done very, very little in Twitter. So we've done some early tests. We didn't see a whole lot of results with like Twitter ads and whatnot, but I want to kind of just differentiate a couple things. So it was our client that had a huge Twitter following and a very engaged Twitter following, being an esports coach and whatnot. And I guess this is where a lot of gamers hang out, right? So at the end of the day, I'm talking about Facebook ads and all this good stuff, right? But at the end of the day, what you need to do is you need to find where your target market is hanging out. And in this case, a lot of them were on Twitter. Okay, so Lewis, the client, actually just had a good Twitter following. And he was like, well, what should I do with Twitter? And I was like, well, just kind of start doing some posts, telling people what's going on, blah, 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 driving some links back to the campaign page, right? Back to the landing page, and we'll see if we can kind of start getting any type of results. And so we started getting some opt-ins and whatnot. And then during the actual live campaign, his Twitter posts were actually outperforming the Facebook ads as far as click-throughs and backers. So the big lesson here is don't rule out any social platform. I made that mistake. I'm a believer now. But the difference is he had built that up over time and had a trust and respect in the community. He wasn't just basically sending out tweets to a community, to Twitter, and saying, "Hey, back my project, back my project, back my project," which is what I see a lot of, right? So if you're going to do Twitter, start right now today. Start building that community. Start participating in that community, and then once you start building that trust and whatnot, start telling people about your project, and then you're going to have a lot better results because of it.
Do you have any data there in terms of like how much funding Twitter brought you or for the project, ballpark numbers?
I believe they brought in, this is ballpark, but I believe they brought in a third of the raise.
A third?
A third.
Wow, that is a lot, man.
Yeah. And it was very, very substantial. It surprised me, and I had to look at it a couple different times. I thought maybe there was a little bug in Kickstarter or whatnot. Wasn't a bug. It's just, that's where his community was. That's where they were hanging out. He was very well trusted and respected in that community. And as a result, people clicked and people bought and people shared.
That's thousands and thousands of dollars just from Twitter. That's insane.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think that kind of underscores the fact that it's really not necessarily about the social network. It's more about the relationship that you have with people and the way that they choose to, whichever network that is best for them, that they like to have discussions and such and follow you.
100%. I mean, you probably get the same thing, right? So I see your emails and I read your emails, just super chill and personal in those. And then I'm on YouTube looking for, different marketing strategies, and guess whose videos I see? I see Sal's. Right? So, and I'm sure that you've seen, if you look at your Google Analytics, you're going to see people coming in from YouTube, and you see people coming in from Facebook, and you see people coming in just off the web, right? So those different channels, and then how you speak to those channels is a direct result of how much money you're going to raise for any business that you do, including crowdfunding.
Well said. I think it's very overwhelming to try and be on all of these different social networks. Just focusing on the one or two that is best for your industry or for the ones that you're strongest in. I think there's a lot to be said for that than trying to, win on every single network like on Pinterest and Instagram and Snapchat, etc. Just picking those one or two. I think that's a really good strategy there.
Yep.
So I want to ask you here. First of all, are there any other strategies that you want to share with the audience when it came to this specific project, or things that were working that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, so not necessarily on this specific project, but there's one we just found out about that's been really, really cool, and I wanted to share it. So it's an app. It's called app.fbcandy.com. Now, with any of these tools, here's what happens. So you're going to start using it, and there's going to come a time where eventually Facebook puts an end to it. So use it and use it now. But how this works is when you start building an email list, right, the big concern is, how do I get leads for the least amount possible that are still targeted, right? Mm-hmm. So the easiest way to do that is if you have an existing customer list, you load that up, and then you create a lookalike audience, and you just start showing ads to that lookalike audience, right? But for 99.9% of people who are crowdfunding, they don't have that list. Okay, so here's ways that you can kind of do a bastardized form of that list that's still very effective. So remember when I was telling you to go and basically start following all the different pages of where you think your crowd hangs out? Mm-hmm. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to go to those pages. You're going to use this app. It's called app.fbcandy.com. And then you're going to plug that URL of that Facebook page into this program. And what that program is going to do then is you can say scrape emails from page. Okay.
Wow.
So here's what happens though. You don't just get basically all the emails of all the millions of fans. You only get the emails of people who have interacted with a Facebook post on that page.
Interesting.
But what's cool about that is who interacts with a Facebook post? People who are engaged fans. Otherwise, it's like me, right? Oh yeah, I like it one time and never come back to it, which is 99% of the stuff, right? But if I'm actively commenting on pictures and posts, I'm an engaged person of that community, and I want that person's email address. And so what happens then is I start pulling all those emails. Now, here's the best way to get your email account shut down. Start emailing those people about your project. Guaranteed you're going to get it shut down if you're using MailChimp or GetResponse, whoever it is, because people are going to just start throwing spam reports, right? So instead, what you want to do is you want to take that list, you want to load it up as a custom audience, and then you want to show ads to that custom audience and have them opt in to your landing page. The other thing you want to do is you want to load that custom audience and create a lookalike audience and start showing ads to that lookalike audience. That's how you can start getting your lead cost down at a buck or a sub buck, right off the get.
I feel like this is a mic drop moment.
Yeah, and I mean, I give this thing 6 months before they change it. So I tell everybody, there's been so many of these tools that have come and gone in the year selling. I mean, you've seen them, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you're listening, do this today. There's no affiliate fees or anything like that for me, but I'm just telling you guys that this is going to help you tremendously get those lead lists down, get those lead lists, and get that cost per lead down immediately.
Very cool. Well, it's clear that you're really knowledgeable about this, and obviously you've run hundreds of projects, so you know what you're doing. For those of us out there that can't afford to hire you, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing these great tips. I know you have a Udemy course. I've had a lot of students go through there. We can link that up, and also some free content that you have. For those of us that are interested in hearing a little bit more about some of the services that you offer and that are interested in having you basically take charge and run all of this for them, can you tell us a little bit about who it is that you work with and how long, when should people reach out to you, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So we typically work with people in a 3 to 6 month time frame. So when someone comes to us and they say, okay, hey, we want to have you work with us in some aspects. And so this could be a couple different options. It could be PR, it could be Facebook ads, it could be coaching and having us working as their outsourced campaign manager, or it can be what's called a full boat, where we basically do everything for the person. We want 3 months. So that's 3 months. So it's 2 months on the front side. So that's 2 months of pre-launch. And that's us building your email lists, getting everything set up. And then it's a full 30-day launch. Okay, so 3 months altogether. And then if we can go longer than that, we typically use that extra time to basically build larger lists. So we've got some customers now that we're like 4 or 5 months in, but they're shooting for high 6-figure, low 7-figure raises.
Awesome. And if this is okay with you, I want to offer something to the community. So I've had a lot of, over the years, people having requests for consulting and coaching, et cetera. And I do run some programs like that, but also people who are looking for someone to actively manage their projects. So I want to offer this here right now on the podcast, where if you sign up for Eli's services with Mad Hatter, and at the end of the first month, I'm willing to give you a free coaching call with me. So that can be, we can go over your project, we can talk about any concerns that you have, things that are going forward. I know Eli has a great service there, but if you also want some personal touch with me, after the first month, I'm happy to offer you that for free. Is that cool with you also, Eli?
Yeah, absolutely. When I tell everybody, it's like, they say, well, who's the best? It's like, well, it's not necessarily who's the best. It's who knows what the hell they're doing, which you obviously do. And at the end of the day, it's getting multiple points of perspective, right? So we've got, people in my network that, I've done this hundreds of times, and I'm still sending them preview links saying, hey, what do you think of this? Is this something that you would opt into? Why or why not? Does a story make sense, right? So the more people, let me rephrase that. The more people who know what the hell they're doing that you can bounce your idea off of and bounce your project off of and get insight, the better Kickstarter campaign you're going to have or Indiegogo campaign you're going to have, and the more money you're going to raise as a result.
Awesome. So what we'll do, we'll be able to track that. We'll put together a contact form for Mad Hatter. And basically, if you are interested and you go through that form, at the end of the first month, we can do our free coaching call. And also we can get a sense of where your project is, address any concerns. And in that way, you're not only getting help from Eli, but also from me and sort of my experience having interviewed lots of people, worked on different projects, et cetera. So you're really getting the best of both worlds there. Eli, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing all of this great content and information and tips. And thank you for also talking a little bit about your story and why you're passionate. As always, I love having you on the show. I think the last one we did was episode 150. We're at over 200 episodes now. It's crazy to me. I feel like that was literally a few months ago when we did our last interview. So thank you for coming on and sharing all of those great tips.
Yeah, absolutely, Sal. Glad to do it, buddy. And thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you for joining me here today. Hope you got a ton of value out of my episode with Eli. He shared a lot of great information, I think. A lot of things that you can use going forward. It also gives you a better idea of the things that you need to do in terms of how many emails should you get, what are the conversion rates that you should be aiming for, what are really the steps going into one of these financial raises, into raising money on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, doing other types of crowdfunding work. So I think it's a lot of good practical information. But if you don't want to master all of that, you don't want to figure all of this out yourself, but you really just want to hand this to someone and they spearhead that project for you, I think Mad Hatter is a great solution. If you want to take advantage of that special offer that we have running for you, all you got to do is go to crowdcrux.com/Mad Hatter. Just fill out the application form there, fill out the necessary information. If you're a good fit for the company, Eli will reach out to you. Keep in mind, you need a budget to be able to do this. So this is probably not for the beginning business owner who hasn't set aside a budget. This is really for you if you're very serious about making a serious dent with your project. I'm talking raising 6 or 7 figures with your campaign, then this is going to be a good fit for you. So that link is crowdcrux.com/Mad Hatter. Thank you for tuning into this episode, and I'll see you next time.